Hello, everyone on Patreon. Thank you so much for your ongoing support and for voting this month on a bonus movie review. The winner this month is An Autumn Afternoon, which was released in 1962. This was directed by Yasujiro Ozu. He wrote the screenplay with Kogo Noda. The plot is an aging widower arranges a marriage for his only daughter. This is the last film that Ozu did, and it's absolutely brilliant. And I'm so glad that it won this month. I just love Ozu in his simplicity, and he manages to make a film that is so accessible, so deep, so relatable, but yet does it with such simplicity. I mean, and it's slow cinema. There's not like high stakes or drama. I mean, there's drama, but it's pretty subtle, and it's just incredible how he just engages the audience to this extent and really makes you live with these people in a way. And in this case, a lot of it to me is just those establishing shots he has at the beginning and throughout the film of where these people are. And he just brings you into that world. One thing, the more I watch Japanese films in general, I see how much cuisine plays a part in that culture because they're often eating, drinking tea, sake, out for dinner, lunch. I love all of that. But this is a phenomenal film, and we have a number of different characters, So for one, we have, I'm going to butcher how to pronounce the names, but one of his frequent collaborators, Chishū Ryū, or Ryu, who plays Shaki Hirama. So it's him, his daughter Mikiko, Kochi is his son, and he has another son, and his older son is married, and this you see the troubles he's having with his wife, but the troubles, I mean, they're not, like as if the couple is gonna break up. It's like, how to, that their lack of money, and why are you spending more money on buying golf clubs, and it's done with a light touch. Even the score. I think that was a good choice because he's doesn't want you to feel. My impression was he's not making you feel like these are severe, dire problems. They're everyday problems. They're ordinary problems, and they're not necessarily so bleak. Even though money problems are difficult, but it's like, okay, well, maybe you spent too much this month, and we need money for a fridge. Why are you also buying golf clubs? And then later she gives in, lets him buy the golf clubs because she knows he'll sulk if too much if he doesn't, and he's telling his family she's just gonna keep giving me a hard time if I buy these golf clubs. And so there's something funny and true and relatable about that. Everybody can relate to that. But the big thing here is that Sheu and his daughter Mikiko, and we've seen this in other films where the daughter is living with the father. The father was a widower, and she feels that she has to take care of him. She's 24, and everyone's saying, she has to get married. And this, it's interesting. One thing was, it seems that I don't know much about a lot about Japanese culture, but like, I don't know if arranged marriages are still something that people do there, but it seems like arranged marriage, it works in Japan to an extent, at least at this time. And so that it can work, and that people maybe look at marriage and relationships in different ways that we do in North America. And so, they feel that he should arrange a marriage for her, and he's like, no, she's naive, and you don't know for sure whether he's saying that because he just doesn't want her to leave, or if he really feels that way. And so, his daughter doesn't want to leave, and you get the impression that she feels the family needs him, needs her. And what really changes is that, because it centers around these three friends. One friend has a young wife, the other friend is married but wants Shehu to marry the daughter off to someone he knows. And then they have this other friend who has a daughter actually, and he's older, and so she's older. And again, you get he just suggests these things, that this person has like a drinking problem, They go out one night, he gets so drunk, they bring him home, and the daughter starts to cry after they leave. So you're like, okay, he gives you enough of a sense of these relationships, but you've got to pay attention and you've got to really, go to the film. And you see, I'm sort of making these things up. I'm like, oh, this must be a drinking problem. And the daughter must be crying because he has a drinking problem. And so, but he's not necessarily saying that. That's just the behavior we're seeing. And so you have to go to the film. You have to make your own judgment calls, which are the kind of films I like the most because I feel included in the meaning and the making of it. And so this is a real lesson for Shihū, because the older man later says, I should have married my daughter off. Now, she's much older. I mean, that's sort of like, maybe that's one thing that doesn't hold up now. It's just because she's quote unquote older. It's like, well, no one's going to want to marry her now. The quote unquote old maid. So, I mean, that was one aspect of this film I didn't care for. But it does make Shihū realize, oh, I don't want this to happen to my daughter. I don't want her to be alone and lonely. And so he tries to marry her off. And so first they find this person. She admits that she likes this man. She becomes open to it. They go to him. He's got a girlfriend already. He's going to get married. So then they go, Shihū goes to his friend and they have this arranged marriage happen. And it's so touching at the wedding, when Shihū says, he's very, everyone's very simple, right? He's like, be a good wife. And he's, giving her this advice. And you see that she's sad to leave. And it's just really heartbreaking. And it isn't really until after the wedding that all this emotion happens. I mean, that's the thing with Ozu and slow cinema sometimes, is that there's very, very little emotion. And, you're just hanging out with the characters, getting to know them, meeting them, getting to know how they interact, their struggles, their problems. And so you're just living with it. It's like fly on the wall filmmaking to an extent. I mean, it's obviously designed and there's a lot of thought that goes into it. I don't mean that in a diminishing way, like, hey, just roll the camera on some people. No, it's obviously well crafted. But like I said, it's setting everything up in a way to this moment where this emotion just bursts. And we've gotten comfortable with this pattern of very slow, very, ordinary in a good way, and then suddenly he just starts to cry, and this is it gets to that other layer of the story of getting older and that inevitability of like your children are gonna leave and life is gonna change, and then maybe the next step is grandkids or and so how do you come to terms with that and how the struggle with that. And it's interesting because he goes to this bar. And the bartender says, "Oh, were you at a funeral?" And then she goes, "Oh, something like that." And it's funny because he was at a wedding, but in a way, it's sort of an interesting perspective because, in a way, from the parents' point of view, the wedding of their daughter or their son is like a funeral because it's like the death of the life they had all together in the same house. And I never thought of that. This is the great thing about a work of art, is that it shows you a perspective that maybe you hadn't thought of. And I thought that was so touching. And another thing that was interesting about the film is that he keeps going to the bar because the bartender reminds him so much of his wife, right? So it's like thinking about old times, right? And what life used to be when you were younger. And his friend who has a younger wife, you hear a lot about women having like quote unquote daddy issues, and perhaps they marry an older man because they had problems with their father. But one thing I thought is like, do older men who are with maybe really young women, do they have daughter issues because their daughters are gone and have married and they miss having the someone to take care of at home? Something I don't know if that's a psychological possibility. But again, these are just things that I'm bringing to it. He's not saying this. He's just showing you these characters, how they interact, what their life is like, what their relationships are, and you fill in your own blanks. But again, I thought the whole thing was so touching, so moving, so minimal, and yet so accessible. I don't think anyone could watch this and not understand it or be confused. Maybe people would have different emotional experiences, and I do think you have to really be interested in it. But it's so accessible. I don't think anyone would be like, huh? I'd have to see it again and again. And I love those kind of films too. But like I said, his genius is his simplicity and his accessibility and his depth of feeling and his way to make these. This is why these movies hold up, because these problems of aging, kids moving on, these are universal problems. And so I loved it. So for those of you who voted, thank you so much. I hope that you've enjoyed this review. If you've seen the film, comment below. Let me know what you think. And if you watched the review and then go see the film, come back. Let me know what you think of it. Thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you in the next video.